Welcome to another edition of the Trahern Crews Show on 94.1 FM, Frogtown Tuned In Radio. Really excited. We got a special guest in the building. We have Kati Medford, Green Party endorsed candidate for City Council in Minneapolis. Say hello to Frogtown, Kati.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this.
Kati, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and just a little bit about where you're from, who you are?
Sure. Yeah, I was born and raised in, the suburbs of Minneapolis. I grew up in the south suburbs and have lived in Minneapolis most of my adult life. And I currently run a mutual aid site in Uptown. And then now I'm doing this.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So my first question that I'm going to ask you is, do you support reparations for the American descendants of chattel slavery?
100%.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And could you expand on that a little bit on why?
Sure. Well, as a white person, I benefit from the from capitalism, and it's not that way for everybody. I feel like I live a beautiful life, and in my best moments when I'm feeling like this is an amazing life, the next thought is I want everybody to feel this. I want everybody to have a beautiful life. And so, and I recognize that's obviously not the case for everybody. And I think capitalism is we're experiencing the worst effects of capitalism. And that was, built on the backs of enslaved folks. So we owe a debt.
No doubt. Thank you.
Yeah.
We today there was some gun violence here in St. Paul. Unfortunately, a young woman lost her life. So public safety is at the top of everybody's mind today. But at the same time, we've seen what happened to George Floyd, Jamar Clark, and many others. So when you're looking at public safety, I know there's a measure in Minneapolis. Tell us a little bit about your public safety plan. Sure.
Well, my plan is to help build a police-free future. Build a city in which we don't feel the need for a murderous police department. There are so many ways to build safety and build a good system, and that's through resources. So my hope is to do everything I can to give everyone that beautiful life and, help the city build that for everybody, ensure a safety net for folks, and just, if everyone is well-resourced, crime will go down. So I live in a very safe corner of Minneapolis, and it's not because of the police. I hardly ever see police there. The reason that we're safe and we have a beautiful life there is because it's well-resourced, and I want to see that for everybody. So that's, how to prevent crime and lower our need for police. But we'll probably always need a response to crime, and I would like to see that be a more compassionate and intentional care rather than punitive.
Wow, that's a answer we haven't heard too much here. Thanks for that thoughtful answer. And could, just as we're talking about it, because we know a lot of people are talking about it, and some people I know on other stations, they were talking about it today. And I don't think me as a Black American, knowing the origins of the police department, and that it started with slavery, I definitely think it's time to relook at what this police department is about. But for more people who don't really understand, could you explain a little bit about amending the city charter?
Sure. From my understanding, the city charter requires a minimum number of police officers, and question number 2 would remove that. So we can start taking resources and putting them into preventative care, and also a better, more compassionate response as well. So, we would be able to demilitarize the police, for example, and create a system that works for everybody.
Absolutely. Environmental justice. What does that look like in Minneapolis?
Well, Minneapolis is currently looking at a Minneapolis Green New Deal. So I believe Cam Gordon has been working on that. And it's, where I'm coming from with the environmental justice is that we don't have time to wring our hands about this, and we don't have time to take small measures, and we need to do bigger things like hold corporations accountable and institutions for the harm that they cause to the environment, because we are in crisis, and if we don't address this, there will be nothing else to address. We're in trouble.
Absolutely. How do you feel about, can you tell us a little bit about the Green Zone Initiative?
I got to be honest that I'm learning as much as I can about all of the issues at once, and I don't know much about the Green Zone Initiative. Okay. So I can't speak to that.
We can come back to that. So we already know that you support reparations, and we're really proud of that. And I know a lot of people throughout the city of St. Paul and Minneapolis, especially where you're running, would like to support your candidacy because you support reparation. Mm-hmm. As your representative, you will focus on establishing a livable minimum wage. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So most people are talking about a $15 minimum wage by, I think, 5 years from now. And that seems very slow and inadequate. I would like to see a $20 an hour minimum wage, but I would like to see that coupled with a guaranteed minimum income, which, just to clarify, is a little different than a universal basic income. I don't think everybody needs a chunk of money every month, but folks under a certain income level should get a chunk of money every month to spend on what they need it to, whether it be for rent or food or any other thing that they choose.
So you're saying like a Jeff Bezos or a Bill Gates wouldn't get universal basic income, but maybe a family making under 100,000.
The other way around. So universal would be for everybody. Okay. But a guaranteed minimum is for, under a certain income level.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to do some research to find that out, because ideally universal basic income, but that's something that I found needs to be done on a national level and has been done in other countries. And then sometimes philanthropists or organizations will do an experiment with a basic income like that, and kind of, do studies to see how well it works. And they're always finding that it does work really well. But to do it on a larger scale, it would probably cost more than the city has. So it seems more feasible and more likely to be a thing that we could actually pass, to look at the guaranteed minimum income.
Wow, that's great. And a path to home ownership for BIPOC and rent control.
Yeah, so rent control, I'm a fan. Question number 3 on the ballot is going to be to it's asking, should we be able to have that conversation? And absolutely, yes, we should have that conversation. And I would like to see that done well in a way that doesn't cause unintentional harm. As a renter, I love renting, and I don't aspire to own a home. I don't need that responsibility, but I love renting, and a huge reason that I love renting is because I've had good landlords, and so I'd like to see rent control done in a way that it does not harm the good landlords, the mom and pop landlords.
Absolutely. So that's actually question number 3.
Yes.
And when you're talking about rent control, and we're talking about things for people who might want to own a home, if there is rent control, it allows them to budget for that. It also may allow them to budget for putting away money to start a business or sending their kids to college and things like that.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, the guaranteed minimum income really helps to have that safety net too. Another option that I've learned about recently that I really love is the community land trust option. And, I was talking to somebody recently about how she's with a community land trust program. And the way that it works is they help you purchase a home. And then when you do decide to sell, it needs to be sold to somebody that's lower income as well. And if any equity that was built in that process, you get to keep 25% of it, and 75% goes back into that land trust. So you get some of the equity, but you're also helping future home buyers as well. And I just think that's a beautiful program. It's cooperative.
Absolutely. I know the city of St. Paul has been doing some work around land trust, so I think that program definitely should be expanded.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking about the police department question, we're also talking about changing some of the laws too. So decriminalizing marijuana, we know a lot of people have been harmed by the criminal justice system for nonviolent offensive. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Expand on how people have been harmed?
Or just why you support decriminalizing marijuana?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's ridiculous that it's illegal. It's not addictive, and the harm is in the prohibition. So, when you are putting something that's not harmful on the black market, like the culture surrounding that becomes harmful. Cigarettes are much more addictive, or they are addictive, period. And if they were illegal, there's so much violence that would be, surrounding the culture of cigarettes even, and smoking. So it's just absolutely ridiculous that weed is illegal. And it's done so much harm over the last 100 years. And I believe that it should be decriminalized completely and available to anyone. And any profits or taxes that should come from that should be put into reparations.
Absolutely. I know in DC, a lot of the shops are owned by blacks or things like that. Would you support a certain percentage of the licenses going to the descendants of slaves or people who have had been arrested for marijuana?
Absolutely, yes. And I also think that any criminal records related to nonviolent crime and marijuana should be expunged completely. Just do away with all of that, and correct the harm that's been done. Not just like, oh, we're done, punishing you for this, but because of the harm that we've done in doing that. Here is, and I don't even know what that would look like. I would say, let's ask them, what would that look like? What would reparations be in that case?
Absolutely. And then the housing situation in Minneapolis is really, and also here in St. Paul, the cost of living, like you were just talking about, having a livable wage, the cost of living is going up in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and affordable housing is getting tight. So how would you help the homeless?
Well, I think that there's a lot that we could do to support our unhoused neighbors. The first thing would be to not bulldoze their encampments. I have some feelings about that. It's atrocious. So that would be the first step. Second step is to create some transitional housing, because I heard recently that we have. I heard one shelter. I don't know if that's accurate in Minneapolis. I thought there was more, but we don't have enough, clearly. But during the pandemic, a place opened up in South Minneapolis called, I believe it's Avia, AVIA, and it's an indoor tiny home village. And it's transitional housing, so everybody gets their own unit, and they also have, education and resources for finding jobs and mental and chemical health services, and it's very well-rounded and supportive, and it's not just a place to stay for the night. So I feel like that model, or similar things like that, could be replicated as a good transition. And then it would be lovely to see, again, more community land trust options, or even, a rental version of that, where cooperative housing for folks in transition in various stages.
Absolutely. How does the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis affect how you approach this? Because I know you're dealing with mutual aid.
Yeah.
People need aid in the community. So how is that affecting how you're campaigning and how you would govern?
Yeah, I like that question. So the mutual aid site that I have is different from most mutual aid sites. A lot of mutual aid sites deal with very immediate and urgent needs, which is so beautiful, and we try to support those sites when we can with food or hygiene products and things like that. But our mutual aid site was actually started as a resale shop, and before we became a business legally, the pandemic hit, and we decided to switch to a mutual aid model and just give everything away. We have all this stuff. People have needs, let's give it away. And if we have to start over with a business later, we'll do that. So that's when we switched to a mutual aid model. And so ours, we do have like general store kind of things, but also like decor for homes and things like that. And so, and the idea with that space is we believe everybody deserves a beautiful life. And so we want to make these beautiful things that we offer available to anybody for free. And then, so that was our initial switch to mutual aid. And then the election happened, and we got yet another wake-up call that half of the country is actively racist and choosing a racist leader. And so we thought, how do we go get our people? And so we decided to evolve the model a little bit to a reparations model, in which everything is free for BIPOC. It's reparations plus, because it's not exclusively for the ADOS community. But it was meant to be an acknowledgement, to invite fellow white folks to acknowledge the harm of systemic racism, and that we do owe a debt, and to acknowledge that we benefit from that system. and also to open up the conversation about reparations, because at that point I didn't realize that it was actually a conversation at a city level or a national level. And so I thought, like, let's mentally prepare fellow white folks for when that's a national conversation. Let's get talking about reparations and what it means and why it's important. So everything is actually available to everybody for free, but we encourage BIPOC to take what they want for free, and white folks donate what you can. So if your income is very low, you donate what you can. And if you, if you're a boutique shopper, you donate like we're a boutique,
That is a great concept, and really like that motto and hope that it catches on. And
Yeah.
when we talk about the housing and the home, I know at one point Mayor Frey, when he first came in, they built, like, just off of permits. I think they made about $1 billion off building permits.
Okay.
That might have been when the Viking Stadium was being built and things like that. So when you're talking about housing development, how would that look to you?
I'm not a fan of new housing development, and the affordable housing that gets built into that is I don't think it's sufficient at all. I'd like to hear more from folks who know more than I do about housing, about how it's a good piece of the puzzle. But so far, what I've learned is that, affordable housing in that capacity is kind of a loophole for developers to, build the things that they want and kind of, say they're doing this good thing. And they set aside a couple units at, I believe, 60% AMI. So most people who need affordable housing are not going to benefit from these units. Mm-hmm. And that restriction, or that agreement to have these units be affordable, it expires after 10 to 20 years. And so it's not sustainable affordable housing. And I would really like to see more public housing instead, just straight public housing.
Talking about public housing, reparations, COVID-19, you just talked about when the pandemic hit. So mm-hmm. I don't know exactly how much the city of Minneapolis has, but I know the city of St. Paul has about $166 million in COVID funding.
Okay.
So your November passes, you're elected. How would you like to see that money spent if it's still available?
Regarding housing?
Or just period housing. If, say, there's $100 million on the table, how would you propose for that?
If I have all this money to spend, it would absolutely be in a guaranteed minimum income. And to do that for a short period of time, couple of years, maybe indefinitely would be ideal. But to do it even for a couple of years while we work out, other ways to address all of these issues in a way that doesn't ultimately cause harm, unintended consequences. So I think the simplest and most holistic way to address this would be a guaranteed minimum income, for sure.
Awesome. And we have a couple more questions. The aquifer over, and a little bit more on the Green New Deal and the new aquifer that they're building over there.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay, well that's something that we could talk about a little later, but I think that's going to help with creating the new energy. And then just citizen-led, going back to question, what question is that on the city changing the charter for the policing? What question?
That's question number 2.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So more about creating policies that allow for forming of citizen-led community safety groups with guidance from the groups who are already organized in this important work.
Yeah, so there are groups in place already. A lot of people argue that, we don't have to change the charter to make this stuff happen. That's true. And people are already making things happen. So, for example, repmn.org, I believe it is a community-based group. They do, emergency response. They've been creating and training groups of people to be an alternative to calling the police. And they're currently testing out the model and taking breaks to reevaluate and see what works and what doesn't. And so these things are in the works, but I would love to see them supported by the city and be one of the responses that we could, when you call 911, the dispatcher could say, do you need an armed police officer? And if not, then we reach out to groups like REP. So I would like to see more of those be our go-to, because most people don't need an armed officer to show up for a thing.
And so that's the thing. And I know a lot of people are trying to figure it out. So 7% of police calls involve a gun. And then we have the police asking for more and more money, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. I know over 40% of the Minneapolis budget goes to the police department. What can we do to change that or make it more equitable?
That's a good question.
I think she froze up for a sec.
You're back. Am I back?
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. We need better accountability, and I just don't even know what that means. I've learned enough about the police department to believe that they're not willing to be held accountable. And so when I get questions about how to hold them accountable and what reform would look like, man, I just don't have hope in that.
So because there's really no way to hold the police accountable, it's like we have to kind of start over. Yeah. And that's what this question is about. And I think just as a Black man, I know there's other people who may say something differently, but knowing the history of the policing in America and that it started with slavery, I definitely think it's time to start over when we're looking at policing in Minnesota and throughout the country. So we're really excited about your campaign. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think we covered it.
Awesome. If people want to get in touch with you, any upcoming events, how they can donate, all that good stuff, let us know.
All right. So my website's the easiest way to contact me. Kati for ward13.com, and that's KATI for Ward 13. And do we have any upcoming events? Well, the Reparations panel is the upcoming event, so people will be able to hang out with both of us there.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to that. Yeah, that's amazing.
So yes, the website, could you give us the website information again?
Sure, it's KATIFOR ward13.com.
Thank you for coming on and being our guest. We'll have you back after you're seated.
Awesome.
In November, and we really appreciate it.
The same. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And that was Kati Medford, running for city council in Minneapolis in Ward 13. Again, go to her website, support her campaign. She supports reparations, so you know what to do. We're going to bring her back after the election and talk to her some more about her campaign and why she supports reparations. I think she did a great job explaining why she supports reparations. I think they have a great business model that a lot of people can follow, whether you're a white American or just somebody who really wants to start giving back and closing the racial wealth gap. You're listening to the Trahern Crews Show. I'd like to thank my audience on Facebook, YouTube, for listening, and to my listening audience on in Frogtown. We're going to jump into some music, and we'll be back right here on the Trahern Crews Show. Oh, before we go, just want to remind you guys that this is coming up. What America Owes Black Businesses, October 25th at Billy's on Grand. Also go to www.stpaulrecoveryact.com and take that reparation survey today. We're talking about the Mayor's Forum. We're giving away free coats October 21st because you know it's going to be cold outside and you know you need a coat. So October 21st at Dayton's Bluff Community Center, Rec Center. Come on out, get you something to eat, get you a free winter coat, and then ask the candidates questions that are important to you. Thank you all on Facebook and YouTube for tuning in. Tune in next Sunday right here, 8 p.m. on the Trahern Crews Show. Peace.